Hi guys, this is Leanna and welcome to Navigating Homeschooling. Today's video, I'm super excited to talk to you about spell to write and read. Now this is a phonics-based program to teach spelling and reading. So I'm going to first tell you why I like this program so much, and then kind of explain a little bit how it works, because you've never used it before. It can be a little bit overwhelming, or at least it was for me, and then show you some ways that you could perhaps cut down on costs. Now, when I was a child and a teenager, I was a voracious reader. However, being a good reader doesn't necessarily equal being a good speller. And I was terrible at spelling. In fact, I'm still terrible with spelling. I've gotten better, I think. But every time I try to spell the word restaurant, autocorrect changes it to restraint. So that just tells you how bad I spell, or else autocorrect's trying to send me a message, which is possible. So I always struggled with spelling, and I was frustrated because it seemed like the English language never followed any of its own rules. And, you know, I like math, because math, you know, you follow a formula and you come to a certain end. And with spelling, it was like I never knew when to use what, and, you know, on some words, E would be dropped when you added a suffix, and on other words, E would stay. And I'm like, why? I mean, you know, why is it sometimes we keep it and sometimes we don't? And it frustrated me because I didn't understand the reasoning behind it. And so I just finally decided that there was no reason, that English is just completely messed up. And I think a lot of people feel that way. For a long time, I had been looking for a spelling program for my kids, because the more I do a lot of writing, and when I have the time, I write novels. And the more I wrote, the more I began to see a pattern in the English language, which helped my spelling, but I still didn't know. I felt like there should be there must be some kind of pattern, some kind of rules, but I couldn't quite figure them out. And so I was looking for a spelling program for my kids that would teach those rules. And most of the programs I came across were your typical, you know, they teach maybe a few phonics rules, maybe a few spelling rules, have a list of similar words that you memorize. And those just never really stuck with me. Those are similar to the programs I used as a kid. Those never really seemed to stick with my children. I mean, I could memorize 20 words for a test and easily pass the test, but then I'd info dump them. They never stuck. And so I wanted something that would, you know, I could say, this is how you spell it, and these are the reasons why. And so I finally came across Spell to Write and Read, and it was exactly what I was looking for. As I began to read this book, I was just, you know, it was like a light bulb came on. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. Oh, so that's why, you know, that's why sometimes we drop the E and sometimes we don't. I mean, it just put it, to me, this is like the math book of spelling. Now, don't be scared if you hate math. But what I mean by that is this book teaches the foundation we need to spell, write, and read in English. You know, if you don't learn you'll never be able to do higher math if you don't learn the foundation first. You don't learn the basic arithmetic. You always struggle with spelling if you don't learn the foundation of our language. Now, English, you know, language is evolving. English is so rich because it comes from so many other languages, and we have a lot of foreign roots in our language, and it's always changing. So there's always going to be exceptions. But if you understand the foundation, you will discover that those exceptions are much fewer than most of us believe, and you'll begin to recognize those exceptions are usually words with foreign roots and things like that. You know, when I was a teenager, my mom tried to get me to learn Latin and Greek roots of English words, and I really didn't pay much attention, put much effort in it, because I thought it was dumb. And I probably should have now, because I might have been better at spelling if I had. Anyway, so this book, it teaches all the basic phonograms, plus it goes into some of the more advanced ones. And it teaches actual spelling rules, not cutesy rules that only work 27% of the time, like first one long, second one silent. And so, I grew up, I learned to read with phonics, and I thought I knew phonics until I read this book. And I realized, I only know some phonics. My phonics knowledge was basically watered down. And my knowledge of the spelling rules were almost non-existent. In fact, the ones I did know, a lot of them weren't even real rules. So here's an example of a phonogram I never learned. EA. This is a phonogram that makes 3 sounds. It makes the long E sound, as in the word eat. It makes the short E sound, as in the word bread. And then it makes the long A sound, as in the word steak. And I was never taught this phonogram. I was just taught, first one long, second one silent. So I'm like, okay, this word eat follows that rule, great. And this word don't. And I was like, what in the world? Well, no, actually, all 3 of these words are making correct phonic sounds. So that eliminates a lot of the confusion. Now, maybe you're asking, who is this program for? Well, this is for, you can use it from kindergarten all the way through, it goes all the way from, first grade words all the way up to college level words. And again, you can start, here with beginning reader, those who are not yet begun reading. It gives you some oral exercises you can do with preschoolers, just some games you can play to help them with their speech, which can be really helpful. And then kindergartens, that you will teach them the phonograms. The first 26 phonograms, of course, are simply the letters of the alphabet. And then, again, like I said, it goes all the way to college age level words. And it really challenged my thinking, because, I've always taught my kids to read, and then, spelling kind of comes as an afterthought. And this program is kind of unique in that, it starts with, you teach the sounds of speech and penmanship, spelling, and reading comes last of all. And so that's kind of a unique order from what I'm used to. But as I read this book, and have studied it and start using it with my kids, I can see how that would work. Because, again, good readers don't necessarily equal good spellers, but generally, good spellers will become good readers. So I want to go through a little bit of the basics of how this program works, because like I said, it can be a little bit daunting. I spent like 2 weeks just studying it and reading it and trying to put it together and make sense of it all. And not necessarily because it's in and of itself complicated, but just because it's different. And, sometimes things that are different, when it's not the way, we've taught it before, or the way we learned it when we were children, we can kind of get the attitude, well, that's just too hard, or, but you know what? I was ready for something different, because clearly what I had learned and what I've been teaching wasn't working, at least as far as spelling was concerned. I had kids who could read well, I could read well, but spelling had always been a challenge, and I was ready for something new and different. So how does this program work? How does it all go together? To start with, if you're hoping for something that you just give to your kids and they can pretty much work it on its own, this is not going to be for you, okay? This is going to require a lot of involvement on your part as the parent and as a teacher. But I think it's worth it. like I said, if you're like me and struggle with spelling, it will be a big help to you as well. But you won't be able to just hand your kids this and say, here, do this. Well, to start off, it's a program that uses dictation, which is something also I've never done before. So that was completely new to me. Okay, so you're gonna need, first of all, you're gonna need this book. This book, Spell to Write and Read. This book is basically the textbook. It'll have, it will go through it. It will teach you, tell you when to teach your kids certain things. It will explain the different phonograms, the different spelling rules, and all that. So you have to have this book. And then you also need the Wise Guide for Spelling. This is basically the spelling book. But again, you can't just have this because you need, again, these aren't intended to be lists to memorize. You need the other book, this one right here, to give you the phonograms and the rules behind the spelling. And it'll show you how to dictate to your child and how to teach each of those rules. So you'll need those two books. And a little bit later, I'll show you where you can get those books and all that. But and then your child is each child is going to create basically their own spelling book, their own textbook. So they're never going to be given this. They're never going to just look at these words and copy of them. And that's a really great thing about this program, is because the children, it uses all the children's senses, so it really reaches a variety of learning styles, because the children will hear the word, they're gonna sound out the word, they're gonna hear the word, and they're going to write it down. They're gonna be actively thinking about the sounds that they hear, and then they're gonna write those sounds down, and only after they do that do they actually see the word. So the visual part, which is usually when we're spelling, that's usually what we've always gotten first. We get a list of spelling words and we see them first. But here, this program forces the student to first hear them, to think logically through the sounds, and the visual part, the seeing part, comes last. And so you're using all your senses. If a child, sees a word, they're less likely to think through why it's spelled that way. That they'll just simply copy it. Especially since we tend to be, us humans tend to be lazy by nature. So they're going to have to hear it, think through it logically, and then only after they've written it down do they actually see it. And so so they're going to create their own spelling book, their own spelling. Each child will create their own, basically their own spelling textbook, and teacher will create one also. And this is mine. And now there's two books. There's the primary log for the kindergartners and first grade, beginning readers there. And then there's the black log, which is for the older students. And so I have here marked the two places, because in the back of each child's book, they're going to create their reference pages. And so, so they're going to create their reference pages. And so I have one for the primary in my book, and one for the black log, the black learning log. And so I have one for both, because I have one child that's using the primary and one that's using the black learning log. And so you're going to need one for each student and then one for yourself, because you're going to create your own, and that's going to be, now the child will never copy from yours, but it helps to have one put together for yourself before you go then try to teach it to the child and have them put it together. Now you don't have to put together yours all at once. I haven't done that. I just make sure I have the pages that we're going to do in the next lesson already done in mine before I teach it to the child. Okay, so I want to go through dictation, because that was something I've never done before, and I had to do a lot of reading trying to figure it out. So just to simplify it for you. So what you're going to do, say you're dictating the word school. So as a teacher, you're going to say, first you're going to say the word, read the sentence, and then say the word again. So you're going to say school. I go to school at home. School. And you're going to use some kind of hand motion to indicate it's one syllable, like that or something. So if it was a 2-syllable word, you might go like that, or anyway. And then you're going to ask the student, how many syllables is it? And they'll tell you 1 syllable. And then you're going to tell them, ask them, the child, help me sound it out. And so you're going to have your palm facing the child, and you're going to hold your one finger up and make the S. And then you're going to use 2 fingers to indicate the K, because the K is made by a 2-letter phonogram, the C and H. Then you're going to hold up 2 more fingers to indicate the oo, because again, a 2-letter phonogram, 2 O's going oo. And then last of all, you're going to need your other hand to do the So this is what you're going to do, and might take a little practice at first. But that gives kind of the students kind of a visual cue. So they know, for instance, the K sound is being made by a 2-letter phonogram. So that immediately indicates to the student that, oh, it's not going to be a K or just a C, because those are both 1-letter phonograms for the K. And then after you do this, the student will, softly sound out the sounds to themselves and write it in their journal. That will be written in the front, because the back is reserved for their reference pages where they're going to write their phonograms and rules. But the front is where they'll put their spelling list, and they'll write it there. So again, they're creating their own spelling list. Now, let's take a look at that word. You're going to, after they write it, they're going to dictate it back to you. And the student, the child will say, you ask them, dictate it back to me, and they'll say, S, K, oo, ol. So again, they're thinking through the sounds. And you're going to write it on the board. Now, when you write school on the board, you're not going to put these boxes around it. I just did this for your benefit. But I just wanted to show you here, you can see that school uses 6 letters, but only 4 phonograms. And you've used your fingers to indicate that. For instance, the child should have had that visual cue of your 2 fingers showing that the K was going to be using a 2-letter phonogram. And so they hopefully shouldn't write a K or a C. They should use a CH. But if for some reason the student had spelled their word wrong, which they would see once they looked up at your example, when they dictated it back to you, they would then just erase their word and rebuild it from the beginning. And so they will build their spelling list. Each word you would dictate to the student in this manner. And then for each child, they're going to have various activities they'll do with their spelling list. They can take, however long they need to learn these words. They can learn, go at their own pace. So the child can create their own flashcards, or the child could, older children could write paragraphs using the words that they're learning. For one of the lessons, it teaches several of the colors, so the child can make a color wheel or something like that. So they have a lot of other interactive activity ideas that you can do to reinforce that those words your child is learning. Plus, they'll have the phonogram flashcards and the spelling rule flashcards as well. Okay, to get your materials, you can go to this website here, which is swrtraining.com. And so the core kit you need is $105. And I don't have, just $100 to drop on something. So I'm going to just show you how you can cut down on costs here in a second. But I mean, really, if you have the money to spend $105, I mean, considering this is a spelling program you can use with all your children from kindergarten until they graduate high school, that's really actually a super, super good deal. But like I said, I don't have the ability to just drop $100 like that. So I found ways to kind of cut down on the cost. But what this gives you is the 2 books you need, and it gives you the 2 books you need, and it gives you the phonogram cards and the spelling rule cards, and it gives you a little CD on how to pronounce the phonograms, all that. But then what you'll also need in addition to this is for each child and for yourself as a teacher, you're going to need a learning log. So the black learning log, which is for the older children, so basically like 2nd grade and up, is $12, and it looks something like this. This is one of the reference pages here. And there's another one. And then for the primary, which would be like those just starting out, $6. And so you can see there's a spelling list that the child would have made, and there's their reference pages. And the primary reference pages are slightly different than the black log reference pages, which is why there's 2 separate books. And of course you'll need your own by yourself one as well as a teacher. But I'm cheap, so that's not what I did, and I'll show you what I did here. What I did to cut down on the cost is, you know, if you bought this book individually on the Spell to Write and Read website, it's $35. So I just went to Amazon and found one used in good condition, and it really was in good condition. There was just some highlights and pencil writing, and so otherwise it was in excellent condition. And so I got that for like less than half the cost. I think I only paid maybe $10 and some shipping. And then same thing with this book, I also got it used as well, and so really cut the cost of those books in half. And then for the phonogram cards and the spelling rule cards, I just made my own, because those are in the back of both of these books. There's a page in the back of both of these books that lists all the phonograms and all the spelling rules. And so I just created my own cards, which was actually really good because it helped me learn some of the ones that I didn't know. And so I'll show you those. So I kind of color coded them for the basic phonograms, which are just the letters of the alphabet. I made them this color. I just bought these at Walmart. So I wrote the phonogram C and the 2 sounds it makes, k and s. And then on the back side, you know, for my use, the front is for the child's use. You know, I have a couple of words written down that go with it. And then, so that's what I did for the phonograms that are simply the letters of the alphabet. Then for all the phonograms that made kind of vowel sounds, I put them in yellow. So those are these. This is the phonogram I showed you earlier. And again, wrote the words on the back for my own reference. And so this is a side you would, you know, use with a child. And then for the phonograms that were consonant sounds, then I used this color. I have the 3 sounds that the phonogram CH makes. And then again, examples back there. Oops, that's the wrong one. Okay, then examples right there. And then for the spelling rules, I use this color. Now the spelling rules were a little bit longer, and so sometimes I had trouble fitting them on the front of the card. So I would put a more basic, a basic abbreviation of the rule on this side. And then if I needed to kind of make it a little more detailed, I would do that on the back side. And so again, I just made those myself, and they really don't cost that much to buy from the site. You can buy them individually, but I'm cheap and decided to make my own. So I have those. And then for the learning logs, again, I didn't want to pay. I would have had to pay, I would have needed 3 black logs, one for myself, and then one for each of my children, or my 2 oldest children. And then I would have needed a primary for myself and a primary for my son. who's in the primary, and with them being 12 and 6 respectively, I was just like, I don't want to spend that for a book. And so I just went to Walmart and got one of these for a couple of dollars. And I just, like I said, I combined for the reference pages, which are different for the primary and the black log. I just made 2 sets of reference pages for each. And so I would have my own set. And so, and then for the kids, then I also bought, and I made sure I bought wide rule, so they have plenty of room to write. Now the downside is going to be for particularly the primary children. If you notice, the primary gives them bigger lines to write in, so they're going to have smaller lines to write in. If you use these, there are composition notebooks that have the bigger lines, but then the only ones I saw also have this just giant blank section up here for drawing pictures, and I didn't want that, and I didn't see any. But anyway, it's working fine. My 6-year-old hasn't really had a lot of trouble with the smaller lines. And so I'm going to show you what they look like. The primary learning log for my 6-year-old. And you can have this table of contents, and there's one for the primary and one for the black learning log that you can photocopy from the book and place in here, and that just shows them where to go. They number their own pages starting from the back for the reference pages, and I gave them this little sticky thing here to help them find it quicker. And so you're going to fold the pages, and the book shows you all how to fold the pages, whether you need to tri-fold them or fold them in half. And you can see here, they recommend having your child learn cursive first, which is, again, is a completely new idea to me. But you can see here, here's my 6-year-old who's never done cursive before, and he's actually doing really, really well. In fact, he doesn't even complain about it. You know, my other 2 older children who didn't learn cursive till they were in 3rd grade, you know, they sit there and gripe and complain about having to use cursive in their book. But the reason they have you use cursive is it helps them to have neater handwriting, and that's really noticeable with my oldest son. And it helps them to, it's actually simpler, they say, for the younger children to form their cursive letters than it is for print letters because of the less strokes. And I would have not thought so myself. I don't like writing in cursive. But it actually seems to be that way for my 6-year-old. You know, they say children who learn cursive first will have better handwriting and continue to use them, continue to use cursive, while children who learn print first will usually continue to write in print. Now you can look here, now they fill them out as they go, as they need them. So some of the pages are going to be blank because we haven't got to them yet. Somewhere in here. Okay, here's, you know, he started on the number page, which I filled out these parts for him. And then these are the numbers. And when they learn these numbers, they have them go ahead and write down these numbers in their reference page as well. So those are numbers that are in his spelling list. And so his spelling list then goes at the beginning. He's written it here. And again, they'll show you in the book how to do the markings and what the markings are for and all that. Basically, the brackets are for related words. And then, like this marking, the 2 here shows the S is going to make its second sound, the Z sound. So that's my 6-year-old. And for my older kids, they basically do the same thing. You know, here's the silent final E page that my 9, almost 10-year-old daughter did. And then my 11-year-old son. And I'm telling you right now, I know this cursive isn't great, but he's left-handed, and if you've ever seen his print, it's almost unreadable. And the readability of his cursive is, I mean, the improvement is simply amazing. But he absolutely hates doing it. And seeing how easy it was for my 6-year-old son to pick it up, it makes me wish I had taught my other kids cursive first. And again, just writing in cursive makes it less likely, especially for like the younger children, that they're going to flip D's and B's and things like that because of the way that cursive is written. And so the book gives this handy little chart I really like. And again, I actually photocopied it and had my kids trace it for practice. But it basically shows you there's basically 4 different types of cursive letters. You have the clock letters, the loop letters, the uphill letters, and then the hump letters. And so that's kind of a handy little tool there to help them remember. And they also recommend only doing the the capital cursive letters as needed. So, you know, for the younger kids just learning, you know, let them learn the capital letter in their name, but don't worry about the other capital letters until, you know, such time as they actually need them. And then last of all, here in that is, this book, it gives you all the examples for all the pages, you know, how to make them for the black log and the primary logs. So again, I was very easily able to construct these in the regular journals I got from Walmart without having to buy the really expensive journals on the website. And I found it's working just fine with my kids, even like I said with my my 6-year-old who writes a little bit bigger. He's not entirely in the lines, but that's fine. And so, if I were to buy one, I would probably buy the primary one. I think these ones work just fine for the older kids. And then, last of all, I forgot to mention, when you do this, don't feel like you have to like read this whole book, like when you're starting out from beginning to end. I've read a lot of it, but you certainly don't have to read the whole thing. It tells you, really you'll need to read, it's divided into like sections here, and you'll need to read like 1 through 12, I think it is, before you ever start the program. And because that just gives you some basic foundational information of the things you'll need to know. And then you can give your kids a diagnostic test to determine where they should be placed in the program, which spelling list they should start on, which it tells you that how to do that on 11. And then for at least before your first day teaching, 12 shows you in detail how to dictate. And then from then on, the rest of the book, you really only have to read it as you need it. It teaches the different phonograms and spelling rules and things like that. It also has a section where it talks about some exceptions and some of the more advanced phonograms, besides the 70 basic ones that are in the flashcards. And so, so you don't have to like read this from front to back from the very beginning, which would, again, it would seem kind of overwhelming. So anyway, I hope this video, if you decide to use this program, I hope that it was clear and will help you starting out, and you know, and hopefully this video will help you determine whether or not this is the right program for you and your children. And if you do decide to use it, hopefully it will make it a little simpler for you starting out. But I've only been doing it a few weeks now, but I really like it. It's really been a help to me. My children, my 2 older ones, have complained a lot about it because it's different. And I think when we come across something different, that's just our human nature. We don't like things that are different and things that are done not the way we're used to doing them. And so with my older kids, you know, they complain about having to use cursive. They complain about, why are we learning, baby rules? I'm like, well, we're getting to the more advanced ones, because even though they're starting kind of in the middle, there's some review in there. But then we'll come across a rule they don't, or a phonogram or a rule they don't know, and I'm like, see, this is why we need to go through this. So they've complained some, but don't get discouraged right away if that's the case with your children, because I think sometimes it just takes time to get used to it. But for my 6-year-old, who this is, he's never known anything else, it's just been a really smooth process. If you're starting out like a young child in this, that's really the way to go, because they're so much less resistant. And for him, it's just been, it's been great. And this is my child that has trouble. My 6-year-old is the one that has trouble with certain sounds, making them, and this has actually really helped him with his speech. And so just practicing those sounds, and then he's actually putting the ending sounds on words that he wasn't putting on words before. And so I'm very, very pleased. And anyway, so that is it for this video, and I actually haven't decided what I'm going to do on my next video, but when I think of it, I will tag it on at the end, and I hope to see you then.